Alright, hello. So I am still working on a public version of Jarvis to release. I'm just in the middle of testing that here and there. But in the meantime, I thought I would show a little bit more about how Jarvis works and explain a little bit of the code behind it, just in case, I don't know, if someone wants to try to make their own or hopefully improve on what I've done. That'd be cool to see as well. I'm going to try to not make it like super boring because, like I said, it is code. But I'm just going to kind of walk through, the main functions and features it has and how everything's organized. So let's dive right in. Okay, so I thought I would start with the computer vision stuff because I think that's the coolest part of Jarvis at the moment. So the first thing that I'll mention is there's a Helldivers 2 wiki out there with a lot of good information on it. So from there, I was able to get individual PNGs for all the arrows, and then also individual PNGs for all the stratagems. And the wiki gets updated pretty quickly with the new war bonds and new releases. So whoever works on that wiki or contributes to it, thank you, shout out to you. Your work was very helpful in this project. So based on that, you might be able to take a few guesses as to how the computer vision stuff works, but I'll just jump in and explain some of the main ideas, and then there's some images we can look at that'll show you what Jarvis is actually doing or what it's actually looking at. So the four main files we have are capture screen, arrow detector, arrow presser, and jammer arrow presser. So everything starts with capture screen. Jarvis basically looks at two main areas of your screen. The first is the center, for when you enter codes into the terminal, and then the second area is the upper left of your screen for when you use the jammer bypass. After you capture the screen, we have the arrow detector itself. So this does the majority of the work, and basically what it's doing is template matching. So it'll take, for example, the PNG of the down arrow. You assume that the template's a certain size, or like the arrows that you're trying to detect are a certain size, and it basically runs this template over the image you give it, and it'll compute a score for how well this template matches whatever it's on top of. And so once it eventually gets to a down arrow, it'll get a high score, and Jarvis will be like, oh, I must be over a down arrow right now. This also happens for the actual stratagem icons when you use the jammer bypass, and I'll show that in just a minute. But after you detect the correct arrows, you then have the arrow presser and the jammed arrow presser, which just takes the arrows from left to right and enters them in. Alright, so we can look at some of these images to see what Jarvis is actually doing or what it's actually looking at. So here, this is an example of what happens when you say Jarvis code and then now. It'll take a capture of the center of your screen, and then it'll run the arrow detector, and it'll give you the arrows from left to right. Another example right here, this one's a little more centered, but same deal. Detects the arrows, outputs them from left to right. Now for the jammer bypass, it's largely the same idea, but it's kind of split up into 3 steps. So what you're looking at here is kind of a preview into the public version that I'm still working on. It turns out that the area you capture on your screen depends on your screen size and resolution, and that was all hard-coded to my screen. So this is a configuration mode that I've been working on, where you can basically just take a screenshot of the needed areas, and that should tell Jarvis exactly where it should look on your screen. So the first thing it does is it captures the entire stratagem menu in the upper left. Then from there, it crops the menu to just the icons on the left. And from here, it'll run the same template matching that it does with the arrows, but for the stratagem icons. And this is just to get the row, basically, of the icon you said. So if you said, like, Jarvis, I need arc thrower, it gets the icon for the arc thrower, and then, runs it over this cropped area. It'll get the highest score once it's actually over the arc thrower template. And then from there, it grabs the area to the right of the icon to get just the arrows, and these arrows aren't like slanted or anything like they're on the terminal, they're just flat, so it's even a little bit quicker to detect these. And this largely works because the stratagem menu doesn't really change, like maybe it might be a little longer if they give us like free stratagems or whatnot, but the arrows are always in the same place relative to the icon. The icons are always in the same place, in the same distance apart from one another, so the menu being static for the most part is largely what allows this to work. And so we can take a look over here to see the icon matching. So in this case, I said autocannon, and you can see that there's a box around the autocannon with the score. You just set a threshold for anything above that score is counted as like the best match. So yeah, that's largely how the computer vision stuff works. There was definitely a lot of trial and error and tweaks that I had to make to have it run the way it does now. But even with that, it's nothing too fancy. It's nothing like revolutionary or anything. It's just the good old CV package that you can get in Python. And then, maybe being a little clever here and there with what Helldivers 2 already gives us as players. Like having the stratagem menu and then cropping it and whatnot. And I am still quite impressed with how efficiently or quickly it runs, especially the stratagem jammer, because there's 3 stages to it. So yeah, definitely the coolest feature in J.A.R.V.I.S at the moment, I think. Of course, I'm biased because I'm the one making it, but I still think this computer vision stuff is pretty cool. So yeah. Okay, so next we're going to look at the voice detection model itself. And for that, I'm fine-tuning a machine learning model that you can find on Hugging Face. It's this Facebook model right here. Out of the box, it works well, but I found that when you play Helldivers and when you say things that you would say in Helldivers like napalm or Seif, there were some inconsistencies or misspellings. So fine-tuning definitely helped it. And to do that, I just made another file where I can easily generate audio clips. So something like, J.A.R.V.I.S, hand me my autocannon. Something like that. And then the corresponding transcription of what you actually said. And over the course of like a few weeks, I just generated like 1,000 of these. And then this file here allows me to just test the trained model without having to rely on like the wake word J.A.R.V.I.S to start the recording or anything, just to see if the trained model works at all. So I can just do like, J.A.R.V.I.S, I need a penguin. I don't know. And great, it works, right? So that's my confirmation that the model itself works. And if it, for some reason it doesn't work when I put it in the code, it's probably because something is going wrong in the actual code and not the model. Okay, so next I'm actually going to jump over the main J.A.R.V.I.S file that's run. I'll come back to this in a minute. Next, we're actually going to look at, I think, the longest file in the project, which is command handlers here. And as the name might suggest, this handles all the commands that J.A.R.V.I.S has. So this handles all the stratagems, all the like special commands, and any commands that I will or want to add in the future. Now, the first thing I'll point out is this delay up here, because I've mentioned it sort of in a few posts replying to people. And so I guess on PlayStation, from talking to a few PlayStation players, it sounds like that there's actually a like a speed limit at which you guys can press the arrow keys in to type in your combos. Whereas on PC, as far as I know, there's not really a limit. I'll note that if I put this delay to literally 0, it doesn't work. The arrow keys or the arrow presses are a little too fast. But on PC, we can more or less press the arrow keys as fast as you can or as fast as you want. But I was saying in those posts that if Arrowhead did decide to add a speed limit to how fast PC players can type in the stratagems, this is the delay that I would increase to hopefully allow J.A.R.V.I.S to still input the commands, just more delayed to align with whatever Arrowhead does. The next thing I'll point out is this list of common prefixes. So this file is basically one giant dictionary, but I don't want to type each line in the dictionary manually. So these are just some phrases or words that either I know I say before calling in stratagems or that I could potentially say. And they work along with make triggers here, which basically takes all of these and then puts it in front of whatever you put as the arguments. So for example, for the 500 kg, the words 500 and 500 kg both have all of these before them as possibilities. So you can say any one of these and then 500 or 500 kg, and J.A.R.V.I.S should recognize that you want the 500 kg. This extras setting here is for just like whole commands that you don't want to put these before it, but in case you want to just say J.A.R.V.I.S 500 and you want J.A.R.V.I.S to also give you the 500, or you could even put like J.A.R.V.I.S taco and it'll call in the 500 for you. Now, you might notice that some of these stratagems, like the strafing run here, have like a bunch of different spellings, and this is because, like I said, there's been 7 versions of that voice detection model. So the early ones still misspelled a few stratagems, but got like the majority of them correct. So I tried to correct for that by just putting in all types of misspellings that Jarvis might hear me say. I don't know if I really need all of these now because the version 7 that I have is pretty good, but just in case, it doesn't hurt, I guess. And so this first section here is just all of the triggers for all the stratagems and all these other commands, like the greetings. You know, when I say like Jarvis, how are you? We have intro music, which I've never shown in a video, but it's just it just plays some music that I have as like battle music. You can stop the intro music, make it cinematic, plays the music, and then takes away the HUD. So yeah, so you have all your triggers here like this. These are some of the like special commands that I was talking about. So like bug breach is the what is it? That's gas mines and an air burst. The destroyer status report. What do you think of this bug nest? That also throws in the 500 kg, and so on and so on. So after all of the voice commands or the triggers, we have this section for the actions only, where these are just the actual arrow keys that you press to call in all the stratagems, and these kind of come together in this last section for audio and action. So for example, for the 500 kg, this line plays one of the audio replies, so something like the right away sir, or like a moment sir, right? One of those. And then it also does the action to call in the 500 kg. This plays in its own thread, so that way it doesn't have to wait for the audio clip to finish before it does the action. They can happen at the same time. And then this up here is supposed to be how you add the cooldown timer to it. It does add the cooldown timer to it. It's just that the cooldown timer doesn't quite work how I want it to. So I'm just leaving it in here because it's not too big of an issue, just leaving it in. But yeah, it doesn't really work. So then after this, everything really comes together in this gigantic dictionary. And there's a lot of stuff packed into here. So remember, these are all the triggers for the stratagem. So these are all of the common prefixes, as well as any of the special single commands that you put in. And then we have the handler, which is the audio reply and the action, so the actual key presses for the stratagem. Then we have the action, so just the key presses by itself with no audio. And then the PNG from the computer vision stuff. So like I mentioned in the computer vision part, when you say, for example, Jarvis, I need a railgun, Jarvis will just pull this entire line for the railgun, including the PNG, and it should have all the information it needs. I don't know if using this ginormous dictionary was the best way to do it for the future, but to add a new stratagem, I basically just have to add, I guess, 4 things. I have to add the triggers, I have to add the action, I have to add the handler, and then I just have to put all 3 of those as a new line down here. So it's relatively simple to do. I could probably even make it more streamlined, but yeah, pretty good as is. Alright, so now let's go back over to the main Jarvis file where everything really comes together. And the first thing we'll look at is this heard wake function. So this just checks to see if the wake word was said. In this case, it's Jarvis, but technically you could set it to whatever you want. And I have these wake variants in here just in case the word is cut off when it comes into the program. So like if the J is missing or the JA is missing, hopefully the program will still be like, okay, I know you meant to say Jarvis, even though to me it was a little cut off. I guess along similar lines, there's also this best partial match function, which was sort of my attempt at autocorrect, I guess. So this takes, a command like I need a 500, and let's say that Jarvis misspells 500 by like a few letters or something. Hopefully this function will catch that, and it'll be like, okay, I know you meant to say I need a 500, even though it was misspelled a little bit for me, and still give you the 500. Then this function here, dispatch command, does most of the work. So this takes a command as input, which is everything after Jarvis, And the first thing it'll do is it'll check to see if you should be in jammer mode. So if you say any of these, it'll put you in jammer mode. And if you say any of these, it'll take you out of jammer mode. If you are in jammer mode, then the commands that you say get sent into run jammed icon arrow detector, which is just all the computer vision stuff from before. If you are not in jammer mode, so the normal mode, then it tries to split the command into two. So I have these splitter words up here, like and then followed by, and I could add more, but really I just only say and because it's the quickest. So it'll try to split the command into two. If it does split it into two, it'll do the first command using the handler. So it'll do both the audio reply and the arrow presses. Then it'll wait for you to use the stratagem. So wait for you to, in my case, click the left mouse button. Then a little bit of time just to make sure things don't bug out. And then it'll do the second stratagem, but it'll only do the arrow presses, not the audio reply. So you won't get like, a moment, sir, use stratagem, a moment, sir. It'll just do it for the first time up here. And then if it's a single command, basically same thing up here, just with one command, and it just does the handler. And then as a last ditch, effort, I guess, if it for some reason can't pick up your command, it'll try the best partial match, which again, I don't really know if I need this because this is technically the slowest route, and it usually works pretty quickly, so I don't actually know if this gets triggered, but I just put it in as just a safeguard. So then for the main loop, J.A.R.V.I.S is basically in a loop of listening, then transcribing, then checking if the wake word was said. And the maximum amount of time for each clip is 4,000 milliseconds. And it records until silence, where it defines silence as 20 milliseconds of nothing. So it's just constantly listening, transcribing, seeing if you said J.A.R.V.I.S. Listening, transcribing, seeing if you said J.A.R.V.I.S. As soon as it does see that you said J.A.R.V.I.S, it breaks out of this loop, and it then tries to peel off everything after the word J.A.R.V.I.S, or just whatever of the like misspelled or cut off versions that I have in here. And then once it has the command, so ideally now you just have things like I need a 500 or activate the rail cannon. Once you have that, there's two paths. The first path is the fastest path, where if you say like J.A.R.V.I.S, I need a 500, that kind of is all like one sentence. The 20 milliseconds of silence didn't get triggered like mid sentence or anything. So you already have the command, just boom, and then just feed it into the dispatch command. The other path is sometimes if I say like J.A.R.V.I.S, I need a 500, that little pause that was there would probably trigger the 20 milliseconds of silence. So it would pick up that I said J.A.R.V.I.S, and then there would be no command after. So in that case, it just starts another clip to just get the command, and then does the same thing. It just feeds it into the dispatch command. And so the main goal with this file was to make it so I don't have to change it much. Like the most recent changes I had to do were just for the jammer bypass over here, but other than that, all the commands live in command handlers, and then this I just basically just leave it as is, which is really nice. Now I will say that getting this voice detection to work well, or just how it does now, was probably the most tedious part of the project. I know that there's probably better ways to do this, because technically right now what I'm doing is just taking a bunch of like discrete clips. I did also read up on like sliding window methods and whatnot, but for context, I had no idea how to do any of this voice detection stuff beforehand. Like I had no idea how like Siri or Alexa did their wake word or anything. So this is just kind of what I found and what I decided to dive into, but I'm sure there are better ways to do this, so you don't have to define these cut-off versions of the wake word, and it'll always get the complete wake word. But as is now, it works well. It works, I don't really have any complaints about how J.A.R.V.I.S is working at the moment, so I'm just leaving it. So just to wrap things up, regarding the public version of J.A.R.V.I.S, like I said, I am still working on that. Just at the moment, I'm trying to handle any like silly issues where if I released it now, I would definitely be getting many of the same messages about silly issues that I should have fixed before I released the project. So I have two people on Reddit who have been kind enough to lend me their time in testing J.A.R.V.I.S and testing different fixes. So shout out to you two. It's still not quite ready yet, but for example, things like the button that you use to open the stratagem menu, I have that set as E, and that was kind of hard coded into Jarvis. So making like a configuration file where you can change certain important keys, and also like the computer vision stuff. Like I said, the area that you capture depends on the size of your screen and your resolution. So the configuration that I have right now, the configuration mode where you basically just take a screenshot and tell Jarvis where to look, it works when I go between my 32-inch 2K monitor and my 27-inch 1080p monitor. But I've yet to confirm if it really does work for like all monitor sizes or most monitor sizes. So that's another thing I have to test. So something else I'll mention about the public version is when I use Jarvis, I just have these buttons on my Stream Deck to start, stop, and restart Jarvis. So the idea is that you would have a Jarvis GUI, which does work at the moment, and it gives you these same buttons just in a little window on your screen. So you can also start, stop, and restart Jarvis without needing to actually have to download Python or any of these packages or anything. You just run it like a .exe basically. The final thing I'll mention is a possible like fully customizable version of Jarvis. This will probably be after the first public release, but a version of Jarvis where you can change like the wake word from being Jarvis to something else, or where you can change some like commands or add your own commands, and also the audio replies. I won't be too difficult to do, more just time consuming to have to like reorganize things, so they're user friendly, but definitely a possibility I've thought about, and probably something I'll work on later. So yeah, that's largely how Jarvis works. I know I didn't go through all of the files, but I think this video is long enough as it is, and it's the main gist of how Jarvis works, and definitely the cool parts like the computer vision. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything or wants to see more of certain parts, feel free to message me. I'm not some big popular YouTuber. I'm just a random dude who likes coding, and thought it'd be cool to share this little project that I'm working on because I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, I'll see you guys in Helldivers. Thanks for watching. See ya.